Hello, everybody. This is Fazbear Entertainment, and today I am going to be giving you, so far from what I've gathered, in a current breakdown of the timeline for the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, and even some possible Easter eggs and stuff like that that I have gathered over the 11 years of following the franchise and following every game and understanding every character. And go ahead, get some snacks, get some drinks, and go ahead and sit tight because this is going to be probably a bit of a conversation. But I do appreciate all those who stay and watch because you might learn something you never knew before. So now I'm sure you all are aware that back in 2014, 11 years ago, was the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, which was based off of Freddy Fazbear and his three companions. And so far was known that they were indeed possessed animatronics that were actively hunting and taking out night guards. Now, as more games got released, it started to develop what people noticed to be a storyline, and many people, especially people that you widely know, were there to develop theories behind the lore and the characters and the involvements and the history and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure, according to a lot of people, that FNAF 1 was the beginning of the Five Nights at Freddy's story. But what if I were to tell you that is not at all true? There was actually more information within the storyline that actually took time to find, break down, and, kind of sort of decipher based off the storyline. But I will tell you how the story actually began. And let me put it into more of a story theme. So there's going to be a quick cut, and we'll do it back into a story theme. So our storyline begins in the early 1940s and 1950s, where a man named William Afton and a man named Henry Emily, both passionate about animatronics and family-friendly entertainment, start their first business together as partners of Fazbear Entertainment. And Fazbear Entertainment's first head of business is known as Fredbear's Singing Show. And of course, it stars Fredbear. They had food and arcades, and fun enough, it was held underneath a circus tent because, well, back then it was pretty normal to hold big events and big new businesses in such a widely displayed area. Now, there's not much information inside the games to pretty much fully describe this Fredbear Singing Show, but I can confirm that it is lore accurate because during Security Breach, you can find somewhere a collectible of a Fredbear Singing Show ticket somewhere located within the map. Now, as we all know, they did run this business for quite a few years until around the early to mid 1970s, where it transformed into what we now know as Fredbear's Family Diner, which they also included a new animatronic, Spring Bonnie. Together, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie would continue to shape the Five Nights at Freddy's lore, as we all know and love. Now, of course, the people that keep up to date with the current and new games, everybody would know about the game called The Secret of the Mimic, which, according to inside information, this also took place during the 70s, alongside Fredbear's Diner. Now, as most people know the lore, you have Edwin Murray, who was a costume designer, who made all of these different things, and, of course, he was contracted by Fazbear Entertainment to make models of the animatronics. And of course, as you know, they made it extremely difficult on him and kept changing the ideas and made him more overly stressed. Now, during this time frame, he also lost his family members, and he kind of sort of lost his mind along with it. But honestly, can't blame him. But as we all know, he had an unfortunate disappearance, which we later find out in the game that he was actually killed by his own creation. What a surprise. But it is also seemed to be shown later that Fazbear Entertainment, due to them having a contract with Edwin and also having him having their assets, they claim his property, and which includes the house up on the hill and also the factory in which he produced his equipment, which means they also claimed the Mimic character, which not much is known of how often it plays within the storyline. I'm still trying to find out information regarding it, but the Mimic takes place during Fredbear's Family Diner, and yeah. Now, as you all know, the franchise did run for quite a few years until the unfortunate incident that caused its foreclosure, which happened around 1983. And I'm pretty sure y'all can guess it, it was the Bite of 83. William Afton's youngest son, by the name of Evan Afton, thanks to Michael's handbook, contributes to the fact that he was the one that lost his frontal lobe to this behemoth of an animatronic, the giant yellow bear, which unfortunately led to the foreclosure of Fredbear's Family Diner. Now also, during around the same year that Fredbear Family Diner closed, a new head of the franchise opened up known as the one and only Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And as you can tell by the animatronic designs behind me, you definitely tell they are just about as creepy as Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, and that would be because they were pretty much running around the same time frame. So, and I'm pretty sure you can all guess, they look entirely similar to another few animatronic designs that I'll be showing later in the video. Now, unfortunately, this franchise would only operate for a couple years. 1983, 1984, and 1985, where the location would face a foreclosure, a very unfortunate one, which there were two factors contributing to its closure. A incident regarding missing children and a massive complaint of foul odors and the animatronics leaking goo and ketchup. Gotta keep it, safe for children. Even though it's a horror game, I gotta, monitor myself on these platforms. But as you can all guess, these animatronics were discontinued due to them smelling and also looking extremely creepy. Because, would you like one of these staring at you when you're eating your birthday cake? Probably not. 2 years after the incident, Fazbear Entertainment attempts to make a grand reopening known as the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. As you can see, you got the new and improved toys with the advanced security systems which are connected to the local police database to stop criminals. And as you can see in the picture, the Woodhead animatronics are here, aka the original Five Nights at Freddy's Freddy Fazbear's Pizza animatronics. Now, unfortunately, the place would not stay open for very long because, as we all know, of course, an incident occurs. You got the Bite of 87, which is unknown exactly who caused the incident. It's either Mangle or Toy Chica, because those two have incidences and voice lines and stuff like that. But, of course, the night guard, Jennifer Fitzgerald, was killed because of this incident, and of course another incident of missing children, and I'm pretty sure y'all know who's behind it at this point. Now, as we all know, this unfortunately ends the foreclosure of the 1987 location of the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, also known as FNAF 2. Now, this ends up leading into what is known as the FNAF 1 location, which was post-1987 and leading into 1993, which is now called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I guess they ran out of ideas for names and decided to stay original. But because they were low on budget and already suffering from a bad reputation and low client numbers, they had to remain original and old-fashioned. Now, as I said before, this company was suffering from lack of money, bad image, damaged reputation, and lack of customers and people supporting the franchise. They unfortunately had to redesign the old withered animatronics into the new versions, as we all know and love, which would be called the FNAF 1 animatronics. But as we all know, timeline-based, these guys are like FNAF 3 versions of the animatronics. Because, well, timeline-based. But, as you all know from the phone guy in line, he dies in this location, alongside the contributing factor that he also states that the animatronics used to be let to walk around during the day until the Bite of 87, where restrictions were placed upon the locations, and so on and so forth. Now, of course, as we know, during the game, you play as a night guard named Mike Schmidt, who plays through and unfortunately gets fired at the end for tampering with the animatronics and smell. But as we all know, after the closure of this location, William Afton, the man behind the slaughter and the missing children's incident, goes in and dismantles all of the animatronics, which results in letting loose the souls, which results in him getting spring locked in the spring bunny suit in the back room, which later gets sealed off, which ends up ending William Afton and his senseless slaughter. Or is it only the beginning? Now, continuing on the spring locking and unfortunate end of William Afton, the safe room that he was killed in was sealed off by likely a false wall, which, according to internal game information and other contributing factors, it was noted that there are hidden rooms within these pizzeria locations that nobody had information or had ideas of accessing, which was an obvious design choice by William Afton himself. Now, William Afton remains trapped inside the spring bodysuit, which was malfunctioning and ended up becoming his eternal tomb of suffering and decay, with the agony and his soul keeping him tethered to the suit. He eventually transformed into what we know as Springtrap. Now, the pizzeria was unfortunately abandoned because, well, incidences, lack of buyers, and, well, the bad reputation and financial difficulties, which it seems soon a lot of companies are going to be end up facing. Roblox, Activision. But anyways, the place was left to rot, and so were the dismantled animatronic suits. But the spirits of the children who were not yet fully at peace lingered in the haunted pizzeria. And for the next 30 years, William Afton remained trapped inside the safe room and was left abandoned. But this also continues to set up the event of FNAF 3 as Fazbear Frights, the horror attraction. Now, of course, as you all know, he gets trapped in there for a good 30 years. So luckily, we get to skip ahead 30 years. And according to my timeline science calculations, we'll be jumping into the year of 2023, where Fazbear Frights takes place. So sit tight and prepare to jump into the space-time continuum. And also, depending on how long this is going to take, I may end up making a part 2, so go ahead and stick around for the part 2, since I'll be releasing it around the same time as part 1, not to make sure that you guys don't miss out on anything amazing. So as we know, 30 years later, with the place all closed up, rotted away and stuff, a group of entrepreneurs, which their main goal is to recreate the horrifying stories and attractions of the Fazbear Entertainment companies, well, their restaurants and stuff. They began searching the old locations, trying to find, items to contribute towards their attempt at making a horror attraction called Fazbear's Fright. Now, during their salvage efforts, they managed to find props, decorations, but they also ended up making a horrifying discovery. In a back room boarded up was a Spring Bonnie suit containing William Afton's decaying corpse. Now, they were completely unaware of the fact that this thing was still fully much aware, awake, and alive. Well, as alive as you can get from being a dead guy in a suit. But as we know, it continues with him hunting down the player, which is believed to be Michael Afton. And from the gameplay, as you all know, this is before the Fazbear Frights even opens. And as you all know, hallucinations, paranormal activity, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, the place ends with the place burning to the ground right before its public opening, which might have been deliberately set to perhaps destroy Springtrap, but of course, despite the burning, Springtrap manages to escape the fire, which was, as you've seen in the cutscene of Such a Location Custom Night, which he was later sold for auction and salvaged, as we know, by the Pizzeria Sim, and also contributing towards Sister Location, which I will get into that after this. Now, as I'm pretty sure y'all are aware, Sister Location and FNAF 4 are, well, placed in numerical order, but according to the timeline, FNAF 4 isn't really relevant to this timeline because, well, it's a nightmare or uh, a memory that one of the characters' children had. It's either Michael or Evan. It's not really necessary to even know such information, but it's also possible that FNAF 4 was just actual testing regarding hallucination gas and uh, creating agony, obviously. But Sister Location contributes more due to Michael Afton working as a night guard there, hand units references to the 1983 issues with missing children, Elizabeth Afton's involvement with her disappearances, the closures, and so forth. But Sister Location also has information regarding Michael Afton and his search for his father during the post FNAF 3 cutscene, and also the continued involvement of the fight against William Afton and so on and so forth. But now we get to continue on to FNAF Pizza Sim. Now, I'm sure y'all are aware about the FNAF 6, also known as Pizza Sim, where Scrap Trap, after surviving FNAF 3 fire, makes his return and ends up appearing in the back of the place of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, which is the Pizzeria Sim, along with Molten Freddy, Scrap Baby, and Lefty. But Michael and Henry end up creating a plan to lure and destroy all of what's left of the haunted animatronics, including his former partner, William Afton. Of course, through a series of audio instructions provided the cassette tapes, Henry guides Michael through the process of salvaging all of the animatronics, which also includes Michael still carrying out his father's final instructions, participating in the process unaware of the true purpose behind it. Now, the final reestablishment of Fazbear Entertainment. This is an attempt to rebrand itself and branch out, including a delivery service using animatronics, as you know, the virtual reality or the AR game, and ends up also resulting afterwards with the VR game Help Wanted. But as we all know, Pizzeria Sim burns down to the ground, with Henry wishing his final farewells, and also begins the secondary branch of Fazbear Entertainment's continuation of the nightmares. From the AR to the VR. So as we all know, FNAF 6 was meant to be the end of the Fazbear Entertainment as a corporate entity. But because of Henry condemning William Afton's soul to purgatory, hence Ultimate Custom Night, William Afton technically survives all of this. And according to information from the VR game Help Wanted, there were several circuit boards and informational stuff that was retrieved from the pizzeria fire, which was scanned during the development of the virtual reality game called Help Wanted, which inadvertently transferred William Afton's digital consciousness, as we all know as Glitch Trap, into the game, where Glitch Trap attempts to manipulate and possess players, eventually possessing Vanessa, also known as Vanny, which leads into, as we know, Security Breach. Now we get to bring up more information regarding the Mimic, who makes a return in FNAF Security Breach Ruin. Now, there is a possible hints and theories regarding the separate entity known as the Mimic and the potential connection between William Afton and and said animatronic, and also the possible use of the Mimic in the creation of the Security Breach animatronics and so on and so forth. Now, not much is known about the Mimic's involvement with all of the FNAF games between the early 70s and the current Security Breach, but it is possible that the Mimic was involved with all of the creation of all the animatronics, especially Sister Location and their ability to mimic and attract parents and children and so on and so forth. Now, as we all know, according to the information from inside the game, Vanny slash Vanessa, being the host of Glitchtrap, infiltrates the new Fazbear Entertainment's company called the Mega Pizzaplex. After many years of being able to rebuild itself, they were finally able to open up with a massive, massive location, a massive mall for all the new and improved animatronics. Now, as we all know, the most plausible information regarding timeline base is that Help Wanted took place in 2029, while Security Breach took place in the 2030s. Now, as we all know through the gameplay, you gotta play as Gregory being hunted by Vanny and the animatronics that are infected with a virus. And as we all know, there are multiple different endings, including the one where we get to help Vanny get free of Glitchtrap's influence by playing the Princess Quest arcade games, which, of course, she ends up leaving her Vanny mask behind as we escape, which ends up being the only ending that leads into Security Breach Ruin, which, as we all know, is where you end up finding the Vanny mask and being infected with the Glitchtrap virus. Now, as we all know, the timeline ending ends with Security Breach Ruin, where we end up meeting the Mimic. But before we meet the Mimic, we gotta understand that there is another ending that involves the existence of Burn Trap, or the reincarnation again of William Afton into a physical form. Now, it is not to be fully said if that is truly the Mimic taking on whatever parts it could find, because you got to remember, Phasma Entertainment did bring along a bunch of scraps from previous locations to salvage them, to use them for new animatronics, because, well, they're cheap like that. But as we all know, the Mimic is obviously there at the location down in the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, because in Security Breach Ruin, we get lured by the Mimic as Cassidy, using Gregory's voice, to go down there and essentially free itself, we end up trapping it, and it results in Cassidy being dropped in an elevator, sending her deeper into the ruins, which ends up being the end. And then it just timeline recirculates thanks to the secret of the Mimic. But according to the timeline, pretty much William Afton, the Glitch Trap, and it's just never ending battle at this point. But anyways, that concludes the pretty much summed up storyline of every single information and timeline that I have researched, gathered, and calculated over the 11 years that I've had to pretty much break down every single bit of information I could gather. And to those who stuck around the entire time to listen to me pretty much just talk and talk about the storyline of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, I gotta say, you guys are true blue Fazbear crew. And I do gotta appreciate y'all for watching this, and I'll continue updating more videos, but this is my official breakdown of the Fazbear Five Nights at Freddy's franchise storyline, so thank y'all for watching, and continue helping support my enthusiastic method of producing entertainment.